So this part is very important. Huh? This following passage, because it introduces many terms which are familiar to the students of the Zen tradition. Huh? This text actually is closely related to Lankavatara Sutra. Huh? According to the tradition, the Lankavatara Sutra is what the Bodhidharma has taught in China. And all his treatises, in a way, are explanation of the Lankavatara Sutra. This treatise is also kind of explanation of the Lankavatara Sutra meaning. And Lankavatara Sutra has some very interesting idea about the Tathagata Garbha, about the Alaya. Alaya is finally the Tathagata Garbha. Tathagata Garbha is finally the Alaya. But in order to understand it, we have to understand all these terms which are used by Zen teachers, mostly for advanced students, because they are not easy to understand. But some of you are very interested in non-dualistic meditation, and these terms are very important for non-dualistic understanding. So we have seen that this mind, when it has the aspect of, and our mind has the aspect of arising and ceasing, this aspect of arising and ceasing is our samsara. And it has the aspect of non-arising and non-ceasing, and that is identical with emptiness, that is identical with the suchness, that is identical with the limit of the reality, many names. This is identical with the Dharmakaya, this is identical with the Dharma Dhatu, Dharma sphere, it is identical with the Dharmata. Many names. So when these two aspects are together, and this is our condition, so that makes the alaya, alaya consciousness. Alaya consciousness is the consciousness which we have explained dwells in the world. We are dwelling in the world because our consciousness dwells in the world. When we become an arahat, so of course we have a consciousness, but we don't dwell in this world. We dwell in nirvana. Nirvana is, and suchness is the same thing, only nirvana is opposed to samsara, but the suchness is not opposed to anything. This is the non-dualistic understanding. To understand it better, and always the Buddha and teachers give examples, to understand that finally the Tathagata Garbha is alaya, is not the same but not different. There are many examples. Maybe the most suitable example is, you take, it comes in the scripture, we are jumping forward. You take this Tathagata Garbha is like water. There is water, and that is Tathagata Garbha. The nature of the water is wetness. When there is water, there is wetness, dampness. There is no, and this wetness is like suchness. But we cannot understand suchness without the water. We cannot understand dampness without the water, right? But when the wind comes, and wind means ignorance, when the wind comes, what will happen? The water will move, but the wetness does not move. Wetness will be the same, right? So actually this wetness, when the wind comes, then the waves arise. There is, that is our mind when it is moving, it is like waves. Now you can do, I have done also, now you can experiment, make the electrodes, or what it is called, put on the brain. They made such experiments with me also. Then when you are thinking something, then it goes like this. When you are in a concentration, then it goes like this, nothing moves. So you can see that this example fits very well. When there are waves, this water will change, but the wetness remains always the same. So the wetness is in the waves, wetness is in the still water. Wetness always remains, and wetness is like the suchness. So ultimately, in order to understand that, he leads us by a very, very deep logic. And this logic has, all logic needs terminology. And this logic has a terminology. If you go to a temple in China, in Japan, they may eventually teach you this terminology, but not in the beginning, because it will be very confusing. So when this aspect we have learned to repeat, when this aspect of the mind, impermanent mind, and the mind which is not impermanent, they are mixed together, what is there is alaya. So we are alaya. And alaya, this mind which dwells, is our subjectivity. We think we are objective, but we are all subjective. We are all dependent on our thought. When our thought appears, immediately appears also our past. So we also rely on the concepts. Unless somebody explained to us 5 aggregates and so on, we will not see automatically the 5 aggregates. In order to see the moon, you need the finger, and the finger are the concepts. So the Chitta Matrata is based on the idea that the concepts are only names, Dharma is only names, and the meaning is attained by names. Without the names, we don't know the meaning. This is very important. In order to understand true Buddhism, finally you have to throw the names and the meanings overboard and experience directly. This is what Bodhidharma has taught in China. In order that people understand it, he said 9 years. We cannot sit 9 years, so people don't believe. So real mind which is to be experienced, the mind which attunes to suchness, is a mind which does not need to think. And that mind which does not need to think, from that mind also arises the mind which needs to think. And that mind which needs to think, that is a mind which is based on our concepts. So finally all is just consciousness. So this alaya consciousness has two aspects. We have learned that include everything, all the phenomena we experience. But our mind is a clear mirror. We experience the reality already with a mirror with the dust. That is very important to understand. Our mind is completely clear mirror, but we experience reality through the dusted mirror. When you understand this clearly, you will get to the root. And this is what the text explains. So this alaya has two aspects which can contain all the dharmas when they are together, and which can give rise to all the dharmas. All the dharmas are really arise because there is the dust in our mirror. Nothing really arises in the mind which has no arising and no passing away. This is the meaning. It is very important. So this dusted mirror, which our alaya is, which our mind which dwells is, it gives rise to all the dharmas. And we see all the dharmas differently because our mirror is dusted. We don't see all the dharmas as being equal as a Buddha sees. So that's why we learn the Heart Sutra. This suchness is neither polluted nor not polluted. It just cannot be grasped by our divisions. And our mind is only dividing. If we want to put everything together, we have to understand emptiness. That is the secret of the mystics. This is also in the Western mysticism. Finally, the reality needs the base, which is ungraspable, unthinkable, unknowable by ordinary means. This is what the Sufis are singing. This is what finally Vedanta says. And this is what the Jewish and the Christian mystics have seen. That which is real, you cannot grasp. That what we grasp is only concept. So because our mirror is dusted, so we give rise to the reality there as something really existing. But that alaya consciousness is only vipaka, is the resultant consciousness. It is neither pure nor impure. But the purities and impurities come from it. The purities and impurities come from the moving consciousness, not from the consciousness which does not move. So this alaya contains all the pure dharmas, all the defiled dharmas. It is the root of the defiled dharmas and of the pure dharmas, because it creates the duality. Then we distinguish in a dual way, so no wonder our past will come, because then we see things in a different way by different concepts. These concepts are our karma finally. So this is why the right view is so important. But the right view is finally only view. So this consciousness, alaya consciousness, has two aspects. We have learned the aspect of bodhi, the aspect of enlightenment. But when we become really enlightened, then there is only one aspect, because the nature of consciousness, no matter whether I or mental consciousness or individual consciousness or alaya consciousness, is the one, and that is the body. The body, when the body becomes suchness, you are a Buddha. Now, our body means awakening. Body means sampajanya, awareness. When the awareness and suchness are one, you are the Supreme Buddha. So the Buddha is one who comes and goes in suchness, tatha agata, tathagata. And now he explained the aspect of our mind which is dusted, as the essence of the mind. This essence of the mind, when it is not thinking, so it penetrates everywhere. It is equal to the space. Everything can be placed in it. When it starts thinking, it is limited. Even old Socrates has taught that the nature of this mind is unlimited. We are the limits ourselves of our mind. This is very important. So when you don't think, the mind is no place where the mind does not penetrate. When you start thinking, the mind creates its limitations. So when the mind stops thinking, it is adopting, so to say, to the Dharma Dhatu, which is equal everywhere, and which is nothing else than the Dharmakaya itself. Based on this understanding, we come to what we call, or what can be explained as the original body. Probably Adi body. We don't have the Sanskrit text. In Chinese it is called Pen Jue. Jue means awareness. Jue means sampajanya. Jie means also wisdom, means awareness, means wisdom. And in the Yogacara tradition, the ultimate Jie, the ultimate Sampajanya, becomes equal with suchness, tathata. So the mirror becomes clean. Now the mirror is dusted, so it creates the illusion of duality. But from the very beginning, no duality was there. It comes from the mind itself. When the dusted mind meets an object, immediately, like two testicles, or what do you call it? The snail, he has a tentacles, not testicles.
Better even is antenna.
Antenna, yeah, antenna is same in Czech. So when it becomes a two, not testicles, the two tentacles, two antennas. The one is the first there has to be grahaka, then there will be grahya. If you don't have grahaka, if you don't have something that grasp the subject, then you will never have the object. So as soon as a karmic mind appears, which is a mind which moves, so there will be the aspect, the subjective aspect, the seer, and when there is a subjective aspect, there will be the seen. They are called, Sanskrit is incredibly fine language, grahaka and grahya. One who grasps, when there is one who grasps, one who moves, there will be something to be grasped. If nobody moves, what will you grasp? This is a very important thing to meditate on. That's why first you learn meditation, concentration with grasping, then you only can let go the object. And then you can investigate that all objects come from the mind itself. That is a mirror. We have learned these 5 steps of meditation. After light of concentration, you can go to mirror, which does not need any object to be grasped. So these are the steps. Understand Chittamatrata, that is Yonisho Manasikara, go back to mind, Pratyahara, Chittavritti Nirodha Yoga, similar concepts. Maybe Patanjali was influenced by Yogacara, we don't know. Or Yogacara was influenced by Patanjali, who knows? And we don't care. That is. And when you have Yonisho Manasikara, you have Pratyahara, you can have Samadhi. First, Savitarka Samadhi, you train with an object to stabilize the object. When you have trained with an object and you have stabilized your mind in order to cross across the Ganges, you have to know swimming. The swimming is a dhyana which stabilizes the object in the mind. Then you can discard the object, and that is mirror. When you work with a mirror, that is Lankavatara Sutra, then your consciousness will make a revolution. It will see the things on the base of suchness. It is just this. Who am I to judge? When the Bible says, when you judge, you will be judged. The same idea. So that aspect of body, when the mind does not move, it adopts to this aspect. That aspect of the body is nothing but the Dharma Dhatu, which is everywhere the same, therefore it can penetrate everything. And that is the Dharmakaya. By understanding that, one will understand the original enlightenment, original awareness. Without the original awareness, we cannot understand that the alaya is the source of our duality. So, in fact, this original enlightenment is alaya. And the alaya, when it is cleaned, is nothing else than the suchness itself. Now you have the dialectics, very important. So you have the, maybe it's Adi body, the original enlightenment. And he explains why is it so? Why do we call it the original enlightenment, original body? Because on the base of the original body, in regard to the original body, we come to the process of enlightening. This is called shijie. Shijie means engaging in the process of enlightenment. You can say process of enlightenment. So you have to have idea of the original enlightenment in order to engage. That is why the faith in Mahayana is called. You have to believe that you have Buddha nature to engage seriously in the process of enlightening, in the process of cleaning this mirror, which was from the very beginning clean. This is why in China you have two schools of Zen, of gradual enlightenment and sudden enlightenment. They come together by these concepts. Gradual enlightenment and sudden enlightenment, finally, is just a method. No? They are concepts to make us realize we are not separated from the Buddha. So, ultimately, when you understand, so this shijie, this process of becoming enlightened, is not different from the root enlightenment. Now comes the Zen logic, which is very difficult to understand for those who don't practice deeply, but these concepts are very useful. If you go to China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, if they see that you are engaging seriously, they may explain these concepts. So, because or as there is a process of being enlightened, of process of getting the enlightenment, so you should understand that on the base of this root enlightenment, there is non-enlightenment. We have aspect, this alaya has aspect of enlightenment and non-enlightenment. But this aspect of non-enlightenment exists only in relation to the enlightenment, and aspect of enlightenment exists only in relation to the aspect of non-enlightenment. If you don't have non-enlightenment, you cannot have enlightenment. If you don't have enlightenment, you cannot have non-enlightenment. So this is the logic of Zen. In a way, this is also the logic of Madhyamika. Everything is related. You cannot have anything which is not related. And whatever is related, it can only be the relative truth. It cannot be the highest truth. So we are not attached to reality, we are attached to the concepts. This is the essence for understanding non-dualistic meditation. No matter whether you use Yogacara or Madhyamika. We see the reality through a dusted mirror, not through the mirror of the Buddha's mind. And the Buddha's mind is real. Our mind is subjective. Only the Buddha's mind is objective. Why it is objective? It does not need the vitarka to understand something. It just reflects it as it is. The wholesome still remains wholesome, unwholesome still remain unwholesome, but you just reflect and explains how to get rid of unwholesome by practicing the wholesome. You don't need to think for that. In our case, we have to think. Why we think? Because our mirror is dusted. So, another step in the logic, on the base of the process, on the base of understanding the non-enlightenment. If you don't understand non-enlightenment, how can you understand enlightenment? On the base of understanding non-enlightenment, this is a base, otherwise you cannot practice. We explain that which we call the process of being enlightened or enlightening. When this aspect of body in the mind comes back to the source, this we call the ultimate enlightenment. The ultimate enlightenment. When we understand the non-enlightenment, we can also understand that our enlightenment is not the ultimate. If we don't understand non-enlightenment, we will not understand that our enlightenment is not ultimate. Therefore, The Zen teaches you should always keep the beginner's mind. Never think that you have attained something. That is a bodhisattva mind, according to Zen. Always beginner's mind. When you have beginner's mind, you can mix with every situation, like milk with the water, even if you are an arahat. That is the bodhisattva ideal. Now he explained all these deep meanings, explaining the process of enlightening. The process of enlightening is going from the end to the beginning. Right? So the process of enlightenment is you can study either from going from the cause to the effect, or you can study from the effect going to the cause. Right? Now you want to go to the beginning, which is the state of Buddhahood, hidden by this dust of our karma, the dust of our holding, grasping. So we have to start from what? From the end, of course, to the beginning. When you reach the beginning, you are a fully enlightened Buddha. That is also what Lankavatara teaches. This is what Bodhidharma, when he came to China, has taught just that. Don't think, see the Buddhahood in yourself. So how does it start? From the end. But the mental process starts from the beginning. Right? So from the end you have to come back to the beginning. That has very deep meaning. Always beginning mind. From the end you have to come to the beginning. And the end is what? You understand, I will read from the text, when you are just a putujana, believing that this having a satkaya ditthi, believing that these five aggregates is the real self. So, when you have the moment of awakening, the clear moment, you understand when the previous thought was an evil thought, the unwholesome thought, which is harmful to you and harmful to the others. What will you do? So you make effort that in the next moment this evil thought goes away. If you are not awakened, you will continue in this evil thought. But when you have evil thought and you don't continue, you have enlightenment. But he says, even so, it is called enlightenment. It is identical with non-enlightenment. Because you still believe that this thought is myself, right? You are a putujana. But you understand how to not let the evil thought continue. So you become a noble putujana. If you let the evil thoughts continue, then you are not a noble putujana. So the noble putujana has also enlightenment, but it is not a real enlightenment. Now, those who practice meditation based on the differentiating consciousness, like the normally vipassana, based on the differentiating consciousness, what do they observe? They observe the change, right? Change is the object of their meditation. So when the disciples of these two vehicles are meditating, they observe the change, and the change is something real for them, right? If the bodhisattva is in the beginning stage of the practice, he also has a similar knowledge that this change is real. He has given rise to the bodhicitta, but he has not yet really advanced in the bodhicitta. He does not see that this change and non-change, they appear together. He has not yet realized. So these people, they meditate on the change which appears in the thought, right? And they consider this change to be the reality. So for them, the thought is not different from the picture which is the object of the thought. Right? If we don't have a picture in the mind, we will not think anything, right? So when they understand the change, penetrate the change, being the reality of the world, so they practice renunciation based on the change. So this is called similar to realization. Similar to realization. That means bodhisadrisha. Similar to realization, but not yet the real body. Because they take this change for something which is really there. That means they still believe that this subject and object is something which really exists. When the subject and object really exist, then this change also really exists. That is a non-dualistic understanding. So this is called the sadrisha bodhi. The first one is bodhi, is enlightenment, but not really enlightenment. Now it is a body indeed, but it is similar to the body, not yet the real body. Now, if you realize the non-dualistic nature of all the subjects of your experience, so you become the Bhumi Bodhisattva. As long as you have not realized suchness, you are a Bodhisattva, but not a Bhumi Bodhisattva, not Bodhisattva established in the reality. Right? Most of the Bodhisattvas, there are almost no exceptions, because to become a Bhumi Bodhisattva is much more difficult than become a Sotapanna. You meditate on non-dualistic reality, not on the object and subject as separate. This is not a doctrine, this is just understanding. Don't take it as a doctrine, it is just to make you realize the advantage of non-dualistic meditation. According to Nagarjuna and according to this tradition, when you meditate with non-dualistic approach, the meditation is much easier and faster. That's why they have taught you, you have to go through the torture of dialectics and all this to make it natural understanding. Because its dualism is so deep in the mind of the beings. So, in the Tibetan tradition, in the Gelug, they study 12 years to make sure they don't mistake this outer reality from the suchness, which is the essence of the outer reality. This is very difficult. This is much more difficult than to contemplate impermanence and turn away from impermanence. This is explanation, of course. It does not necessarily mean that the disciple of the Buddha does not contemplate the non-duality. It is also in the scriptures, but not emphasized. It is there in Sutta Nipata and so on. You find all these ideas also. Ultimately, the 5 aggregates are just nothing but emptiness. But you come to it through understanding impermanence and understanding them as suchness. You need to realize that which stands. So first you realize the passing away, that even the Putujana can realize. Then you realize impermanence when you, in Prayoga Marga, when you meditate on the impermanence, that will open your eyes, that will open your Dhamma Chakhu, the Panya Chakhu. But if you open your Dhammachakku, Panyachakku only on meditating on impermanence, you will still not necessarily realize that the suchness does not change, that the true mind does not change. And that is to be realized in this tradition. And this is the object of meditation. Even so the mind is changing, the true mind does not change. So there is a clear distinction between the true mind and the fabricated mind. When you learn the Zen tradition, when you go in Japan for the Xiaochan, for the interview, so if the teacher is very skillful, so he lets you talk and ask you all kinds of questions. Then you talk and talk and talk, and then Makumozo! It means don't fabricate anything. It's a different method. Makumozo, with a samurai-like. This is the Japanese style. We are always fabricating something. So a skillful teacher lets you talk, then Makumozo. Okay, so we have covered that which is sadrisha body. It is like a body, but it cannot lead to the realization of the Dharmakaya, which is the aim of the Bodhisattva. That's why you give rise to bodhicitta. You want to realize the real state of the Buddha, to be inseparable from that state. You have to become the Bhumi Bodhisattva. Then you can never turn away. Nagarjuna, he is very wise in his commentary to the great Pragya Paramita Sutra. He tells a nice story. Probably he has invented it. That's what the teachers mostly do. He says that Shariputra, that he became the chief disciple, there are causes and conditions. He has practiced with Buddha innumerable times. And they were friends, and you will find in the commentaries of the Jataka, many times you find the Shariputra and Buddha together as a bodhisattva. And how did the Shariputra become an arahat? There is a very interesting story. The Shariputra was the most diligent disciple, very, very diligent. So according to the Indian tradition, if you meditate diligently, the seat of the Indra becomes hot, because he is worried you may replace him. So the seat of the, you have find many, many stories like that in the commentaries. When you work hard, the seat of the Indra becomes hot, so he comes to make obstacle for you. So the Sariputra, he was practicing always with a Buddha, and he, like Buddha, he gave rise to bodhicitta, and he's practicing very hard. So the Indra comes to test him. So he takes the body of an old Brahmin with rugged clothes and with the teeth hanging out. And he comes to the Shariputra and says, you venerable, please give me your eye. I am an old man, I cannot see. Please give me your eye. And so Shariputra sings, well, have given rise to bodhicitta. My teacher said that we have to learn to give everything. So he takes his right eye, how do you say, he scoops out. He scoops out, very good, I'm learning English. Scoops out his right eye and very respectfully he gives it to this old Brahmin and says, please accept my offering. Then he looks at it and spits on it and say, you fool, I did not want the right eye, I wanted the left one. So Sariputra, he thinks, this becoming a Buddha is so difficult. I better make end to this senseless samsara. So he make determination, he wants to make the end to this senseless samsara. In next life he is born as Shariputra in Nalanda, and he becomes the chief disciple of the Buddha and becomes Arahat very, very quickly because he's so disgusted with this samsara. So Sariputra, his disgust was so great, says Ashwagosha, that when he went to heaven, he has supernatural powers. He went to the Tushita heaven and he sees all these Tavatimsa heaven, he sees all these beautiful nymphs, which are impossible to not to be attached. But he is disgusted with the bodies of the nymphs. So Ashwagosha, he wrote a kavya called Saundarananda. You know, you may have heard, very famous, beautiful Sanskrit. He was a great poet. And he gives a story of Nanda, who was also the cousin of Buddha, like Ananda. The Nanda, he fell in love with the Janapada Kalyani, with the most beautiful woman of the Sakya community. He fell in love, and it was exactly at the time when Buddha, after his enlightenment, he comes back to Kapilavastu to enlighten as he promised his family. No? So he naturally goes back, and when his family sees him, Ananda, Anuruddha and so on, when they see him, they are so impressed, they all want to become monks. So most of these great arahats, they are also from the Sakya clan. Now this Nanda, he is not interested because he has a very beautiful lady, becoming very intimate with her, he wants to marry. So his relative Ananda, he tries to convince him, you see how you can become, see our uncle, just observe him how he is. We can also become like that if we try hard. Why don't you come and also become a monk? They are best friends, Nanda and Ananda. But Nanda does not want to listen. I want to get married, and he's so much looking forward to get married. So Ananda, he has very deep influence on Buddha. So he tells Buddha, please, you are so wise, use some skillful means to convert this my best friend Nanda. He is also your relative. Please do something kindly out of compassion. So the Buddha, he takes goes to see Nanda and tells him, would you like to go to heaven? And he says, oh, I would not mind. So they fly together over the Himalayas, very beautiful descriptions in Sanskrit. They fly over the Himalayas up, like Hanuman. And they go up to the heaven, and down the Buddha tells him as they fly, do you look down at what do you see? I see the monkeys. Look, do you see this female monkey? Yes, I can see. Okay. Then they go to the heaven, and he shows him these nymphs in the heaven, and he says, now what do you think about your life? Well, she is just like that female monkey. So he takes him down again, and then he decides to renunciate because he wants to enjoy not his wife, but but this nymph in the heaven. They are so beautiful that he forgets his wife, no? But he renunciates. Then slowly we learn some meditation, and Ananda always with him. So he asks him, what is your motivation, my friend? Why are you meditating? Then he feels very ashamed. Then he starts to meditate properly and also becomes an arahat. So very wonderful story by the same author, Ashwagosha. We are to believe.
In the Pali literature, the story is slightly different.
It is the same story, no?
Same story, slightly different.
Slightly different.
The way Buddha ordains him is, while leaving the palace, he just hands over his bowl to him and walks away. So Nanda has to now follow the Buddha all the way to the monastery. And when they reach the monastery, Buddha says, ordain him. So he is ordained out of respect for the Buddha, but he doesn't like practicing.
So that is slightly different. But this is not... Ashwagosha is a poet. So the poets always like to make it more drastic, no? That is the job.
Or who knows which story is right,
So...
Bhante, sorry to interrupt, but it seems like a good moment to suggest that we segue into opportunity for questions. It's now 5:20.
Okay.
So we have another...
So we finish
so.
this tomorrow. First, you have to understand that the evil thoughts are harming. So you make an effort not to get rid of them. This is not enlightenment, you are still a putujana, but it is already enlightenment. Then you meditate on impermanence. Next, after the nirodha, comes what? Comes anicca, no? Change. So you meditate on change, you may realize something which is different from the change, but it is still the opposite. It does not stand. Now you become a bodhisattva, bhumi bodhisattva. This is very difficult. Now the bhumi bodhisattva, there may be still some arahats, but the bhumi bodhisattvas are even more rare than the arahat. In China, everybody thinks that Master Shi Kung was possibly the last real bhumi bodhisattva. Incredible stories about him. He, in the time of when the communists came to power, he was in Yunnan, where I'm telling the stories, questions and answers.
Maybe we can have stories until the question arises, but if a question does arise, please let me know. We have the...
So when he was in Yunnan, on the Jizushan, which means Kukutapada Parvata. You have one near Bodh Gaya, where the Venerable Kashyapa is said to have entered the mountain, and when the Maitreya comes, he will come out of the mountain. That is a story. And the Chinese believe that that mountain is in Yunnan. That is one of the 8 holy places in the Yunnan. It is also called Kukutapada Parvata. He was staying somewhere there. There is still the temple where he stayed. And his presence was so powerful, he meditated in that dilapidated temple which was destroyed by the civil war, and people were so impressed in the locality that they renewed the temple just by his presence. Then the communists came, and the head of the Communist Party in Yunnan, he wanted to humiliate the Buddhists to get rid of the influence of Buddhism and of religion among the people. Religion is, and he was so famous, so he closed him in prison, and they beat him terribly. And those very guards which were holding him, they were all converted to Buddhism. So powerful was his samadhi. And so Mao Zedong, he heard about that official and he was afraid that the people will rebel. So he immediately ordered that he is released. He punished the one who ordered him to be flogged and so on. And he became, for a short time, the head of the China Buddhist Association. A very powerful man. Anyway, many stories about him, but now it's time for questions and answers, not for...
So Bhante, the link between Chitta and Chitra, that question is still bouncing around in my mind. If you could elaborate on that.
Well, there is Chitta will not arise unless there is some picture in the mind. Right?
Yes.
That picture is called nimitta. Because you hold to the nimitta, you perceive. When you perceive, you receive. This reception is sensation. So the mind starts to move.
So the mind moves from Chitra to Chitra.
If you believe in Chitta Matrata, yes, of course. Right. Because of holding to the Chitra, this Chitra becomes the reflected image in the mind. This reflected image in the mind makes the deep imprint, and according to the imprints in our mind, we then judge the reality. No? That makes sense.
And as we practice and the 5 aggregates start breaking down, the Chitra will become, when we reach probably the point of nothingness.
Well, you will not hold to the Chitra. The Arahat also does not hold to the Chitra. Therefore, he does not give rise to the defilements. No?
So even an Arahat has a Chitra on his Chitta.
The Arahat still is not rid of his habitual energies. And they are based on these Chitras.
But they don't hold on to them.
The Buddha is completely free from holding to anything. So he does not need any vitarka.
So did the Buddha have Chitra in his Chitta?
He does not need. He became the Dharmakaya. The Dharmakaya does not have any Chitras. It just like a mirror. It does not keep any image. Right? Yeah. That's why in Yogacara it's very important meditate on the mind as a mirror. Because it is dusted, so it distorts the image. I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it. Arahat, he has freedom in regard to the reception of the object, but he still holds some images, therefore he has still his habits. He eats more Indian food if he is Indian Arahat, he eats more Thai food if he is a Thai Arahat, and he may eat a little of Indian food. We are still, it will not lead to any klesha, defilement, but this habit will be still there. But as far as a Buddha is concerned, all the habits will not in any way influence his mind. So in every situation, he is suchness. His awareness becomes suchness. Suchness becomes awareness. And that is, of course, very difficult. For that, in a traditional Buddhism, you have to practice like a bodhisattva many, many kalpas. And that you can remember all your past lives. And exactly, you can also see how we beings who are still victims to our habits, we still act in a certain way. When you are arahats, it will not bring any defilements, but the habits will be still there.
Okay. And in the case of a Pacceka Buddha?
Pacceka Buddha also still can have his habits, because he is also, his realization is still based on correct differentiation. The Buddha goes beyond the differentiation, just reflects as it is. The Arahat becomes Arahat because he has penetrated the Four Noble Truths. The Pacceka Buddha is said to be Pacceka Buddha. When the Buddha is not there, there will be only Pacceka Buddhas. He becomes Pacceka Buddha because he penetrated the dependent origination. He meditates on dependent origination. So his realization is supposed to be even deeper. But the Buddha, he has the deepest realization, therefore he is Dharmakaya. The real Buddha has no form. No. And that is the nature of the mind. And this is a meditation in this tradition. It is not a dogma, but it is a skillful means for understand the meditation better. If you understand the meditation better, you are supposed to work faster for the realization, and you are not so tight with the rules. In the Zen tradition or in Tibetan tradition, the teacher decides the rules, because the Vinaya is only relative truth, not the. But in Theravada, they believe that you cannot change it because it is by Buddha, but it is based on not on Paramartha, but on the Samvati. The Samvati has changed. So we wear a different dress. We can behave in a different way. The one is not so bound on the rules because you meditate on the nature of the mind. No? It is same as the Madhyamika or the Yogacara. That is the mind is non-dualistic. Whatever we distinguish can only be Samvuti, cannot be the Paramattha. That is the teaching of the teachers of the so-called Mahayana. There was never any Mahayana, it is of course only later labels, but it is very helpful.
The Silabhatta Paramas fetter, I think that is what is referring to?
Also,
the attachment to the...
Also, yes. Also, but it is a correct customs. In the time of Buddha, even now in India, they practice still incorrectly, like they decide to keep the hand up for 1 month or so, they strengthen the will, but the wisdom is not there. They still get angry, right? And so we have to bring the wisdom, and that can only happen by vipassana, and that can only happen when we have the correct view. No?
For someone who has a very good base of Sanskrit but has no understanding of Buddhism, where should they start? Without having...
Well, in order that Buddhism keeps the tradition, there has to be a certain terminology, there has to be certain rules. Strictly speaking, according to Buddhism, even, I don't know, even the most enlightened yogis still are putujana, which is nonsense. No? It is very difficult to believe that Maharishi is just a putujana. No? That is very difficult to believe. But there is tradition, and this tradition has its certain forms, and people hold to these forms. That's why this tradition still exists. It is necessary. But Buddha says himself, you should go beyond tradition. But it is very difficult. If you go beyond tradition, then there will be no rules. If there will be no rules, then the group cannot hold together, no? And when there are common rules, there is common terminology. And that's how the tradition can exist for so long. So it is useful, but at the same time it is restrictive. But without the discipline, one will not get anywhere, no? But the rules of the discipline can be different. No? That is sure. Okay. Satisfied?
I'm asking for a mother figure in my life who has very good base of Sanskrit, but has no idea of Buddhism. So how can I introduce Buddhism to her without having her learn Pali?
Well, in Sanskrit maybe depends on her interest. You always have to, if she has interest in philosophy, then there is nothing better than Mula Madhyamika Karikas by Nagarjuna. That is, if she likes stories, then Ashwagosha is super, like Buddha Charitam. That is wonderful. And it also has some philosophy, but mostly beautiful stories, and flowing Sanskrit, like even the Kalidasa was so impressed by Ashwagosha. He has very beautiful language. And if interested in stories, also can read like Jata Kamala, to have faith in Buddha. It's very beautiful stories by Arya Sura, and so on and so on. There are many books. Depends on the interest, no?
Yeah.
If interested in meditation, then this whatever is in Sanskrit, like Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, the Shravaka Bhumi, Bodhisattva Bhumi, so that she can see how the disciples practice, how the bodhisattvas practice. No? Depends on the interest. No? Yes.
I'll gift her all the 4 books, and then she can decide which one is catching her fancy.
Yes, this is the best. We can only study well if we have chanda.
Yes.
Chanda mulika sabbe dhamma. All the dhammas are based on desire. No desire, no dharma. So we have to have good desire, good motivation, and we will become certainly clear. So this is the way to do.
Thank you.
Mande, what is the significance of prayers and rituals and chanting?
It has significance only if you take it as a discipline. If you take it as just no discipline, then it will not have a great effect. There is a very famous story in the commentary to BPada. BPada is possibly the closest scripture to what the Buddha has originally taught. It is the essence of Buddhism. Very important, BPada. If you want to get familiar, get the best of Buddhism, please study BPada. And its commentaries are also wonderful, also already, I think, translated into English, at least something. So there is a story, the Buddha and 4 laymen sitting under the tree. And the Buddha is teaching them Dharma, explaining in Samadhi, the 4 Noble Truths or something. So one of these disciples is shining and listening with deep concentration. The other disciple sitting next to him is always playing with the branch. Always waving the branch, he is very restless. The other disciple is sitting under the tree, he is always with his palms, he is digging in the ground. And the last one is sitting there and always using this finger to dig in the ground, all very restless. So the Buddha teaches, then end, he goes away, and the Ananda sitting as usual next to him, he asks, how is it this one is listening to you and he is all shining, the other one is playing with a branch, the other one are digging in the earth, what is the cause and conditions for that? And the Buddha says, the one who was listening with such a deep attention, listening in Samadhi, during my speech, he became enlightened. The other one, he has a habit of the monkey, he has been monkey for many previous lives, so he cannot concentrate his mind, so he's always playing with the branch. It is his habit, and habits are very difficult to change. The other one, he was a pig. For many lives, he has such habits of the pig, very difficult to change. He cannot concentrate the mind. And the last one, he was an earthworm. He's always wiggling. He has this habit for innumerable lives. It is very difficult to change. So we are all governed by our habits. So in the time of Buddha, because people were practicing deep concentration, in the time in India, deep concentration was the subject matter of the study. You could not remember the Vedas without having deep concentration. There are still some gurukulas where they really learn deep concentrations and they learn the Vedas by remembering. In Burma there are 6 monks who have remembered all the Tripitaka. They are in the history of the Burma, famous monks. They don't need to book, they can recite everything by heart. And that is something, you have seen the Tripitaka, how great it is. So, in the old times, even in the West, the memorization was a part of the education. Now we have computer, so we are losing this ability to concentrate the mind. But if the mind is concentrated, it can absorb these deep ideas. If there is a teacher who can transfer it properly in samadhi and so on. And this is also the base for understanding the Zen tradition. According to the Zen tradition, when the Buddha was teaching, he was playing with a flower. And Kasyapa, Mahakasyapa, he smiled and he became the first patriarch of the Zen. Because this moving mind, if your mind is in samadhi, is not different from the non-moving mind. And that is Zen. That is to be realized.
Bhante ji, no, the light is here. Yeah. Bhante ji, how to distinguish, when we say mind which does not have thoughts, it's not moving. So the non-discursive mind versus the mind which is
nothing versus
non-dual.
Except ignorance. Nothing is versus. That is Zen.
No, but for example, when you said when they connect the electrodes, etc., so the mind can be flat even in samadhi, but it's not necessary, it is a non-dual samadhi.
The mind has to do with energy, no? The mind is energy. We are also energy. The mind is also energy. If the mind has no energy, nothing will move. And this energy of the mind is a prana. If the mind is still, then the prana will also still itself. That is the experiment. But from outside you still cannot understand. But it can lead ignorant beings to understanding that this silent mind is very important. It saves so much energy. And it brings clarity.
Is there a difference in the silence of the mind between the mind which is in non-dual meditation versus a mind which is in a samadhi?
There is only one mind. There are not two minds. Who is distinguishing? There is only one mind. And this is what is to be realized. This is Yogacara. So you have to affirm, like in the scripture, the existence of one mind to realize the one mind. To realize what? To realize that your mirror has dust, no?
Bhante, what is the third turning of the wheel?
Pardon?
The third turning of the wheel.
Third turning of the wheel, yes, very good question. That is the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra. For this Yogacara tradition, Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra is the base. And the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra you can translate as untying the knots. I have translated that into Czech as untying the knots, but Xuanzang translated as the revealing the secret. But it comes to the same. Revealing the secret is untying the knots. No? Sandhi means knot. Sandhi means also secret in Sanskrit. They are synonyms. Now, the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra is said to be the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning of the wheel of Dharma is in where? Isipatana. Isipatane Nigadaye. In Vanarasi. Vanarasiyam Isipatane Nigadaye. And so on. In many suttas you have this sentence, right? So, that is the Four Noble Truths. That is Dhammacakka Parivartana Sutta. It exists in all Buddhist traditions, and it is where the Dharma was first taught. Then, so the tradition, when the disciples were ripe, so in Rajagaha, at the Gridhakuta, Buddha has taught the Transcendental Wisdom Sutra. There is the Four Noble Truths are still Neyartha. The Nitartha is only one, the Sunyata. Then, in Vaisali, the Buddha is teaching this Sunyata being the only reality is still only Neyartha. The real Nitartha is the three bases in experience of reality and three non-self-existent nature of these three bases for understanding reality. So the mind is there. It has three bases for understanding reality. When you penetrate their non-self-existent nature, then you have penetrated the nature of the mind, which is emptiness. So the mind is there, but it is neither there, not there. It is unspeakable, ungraspable. This is what we chant, the Heart Sutra, but the real interpretation according to Yogacara is that you have to accept the existence of the mind to empty the mind. And existence of the mind is that which creates the duality. The mind itself creates the duality, so you have to accept that it is there. So you have three realities. You have the reality which is fabricated by names and concepts, that is called parikalpita. Parikalpita means fabricated all around. Pari means all around. Kalpita means fabricated, put together. Kalp, Sanskrit, means put together. Arrange something. Therefore, kalpana, vikalpa, all this is arranging something.
Kalpa in Pali is kappa, which is the
Yes, same.
And how
Pardon?
How would we connect? Because kappa in Pali is a time period.
No. Kalp becomes LP becomes double P. Huh? So kappa, you have also vikappa. Huh? Vikappa is vikalpa. Yes? And kalpana, you have kapana.
Yes.
That is the same thing.
But the Pali kappa is, or the Mahakappa is
Yeah.
the time period.
Kappa means kalpa.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no difference. Kappa means kalpa. What is the problem? This is also fabricated. Sanskrit has very deep meanings. That is why even for the study of Pali, Sanskrit is very helpful. Because these roots, they are not so obvious in Pali.
Bhante, just checking in with the time, aware that we will soon be going for dinner. I'm just wondering if we could invite one more question, if there is one.
Well, we have started explaining these 3 levels of reality, but we did not. We came only to the first level. Huh? So this parikalpita reality has no own nature, because the names, they have no characteristic. The name has no characteristic. This is a table. In Czech it is stool. In Russian it is stol. In Hindi it is mess. In English it is table. It has no characteristic whatsoever. So this fabricated reality is without characteristics. So it cannot have any own nature. Now we understand the reality through the glasses of the concepts, of the names. So that reality which we see subjectively, it has never arisen. So it is free from the self-nature of arising. That reality is called paratantra, arisen in regard to the other. In order to understand this text, this is also very important. Then you have the perfect reality, parinishpana. The parinishpana reality is the suchness which has no characteristic to be grasped. So it has no svabhava by its own nature. So when you understand, that is why we are learning this scripture, when you understand the causality as it is without your distorting it, so you will get to the parinishpana, the perfect reality, which is suchness, which is ungraspable, but which is there. Therefore it has the aspect of emptiness, but also the aspect of non-emptiness, as we have learned. So the real reality is neither emptiness nor non-emptiness, neither being nor non-being, neither self nor non-self. You cannot reach it. It is aprapya. So that is very deep understanding of Buddhism. And it is very useful, of course. But it is still only the concept. The Yoga Asanga himself says, no, actually it is Tiramati, I think. No, it's Vasubandhu says when you hold to Yogacara, you don't understand Yogacara. When you hold to Madhyamika, you don't understand Madhyamika. You take in the words of Nagarjuna, you take the snake on the wrong side. You just use the Madhyamika, the emptiness, in order to get rid of your holding, no? In emptiness there is nothing to hold. So the emptiness itself is not a concept, it is a reality, but you need concepts to understand the reality. So meditation on emptiness. But the Yogacara, according to Tibetan Buddhism, the Yogacara is the means to understand the Madhyamika, which is the ultimate. But actually, in Chinese Buddhism, you can mix them together, there is no problem. Okay, so
thank you, Bhante.
So we have a lot to learn and we have fun. When we have fun, we learn very fast. When we don't have fun, when we are bored, we don't learn anything. So whatever we learn is a great treasure, and we will learn more when we have enthusiasm, when we have desire. So the Buddha says, all the phenomena are based on desire. This is also very significant for understanding Buddhism. Sabbe Dhamma Chanda Mulika. So we have to develop the Dhamma Chanda, not Kama Chanda.